Shifted in forward, shifted in reverse. Domestic or foreign, I please you with my service. Shifted in forward, shifted in reverse. Domestic or foreign, I please you with my service.
It may be a surprise to many that Iran has a rather large automobile manufacturing industry, and all of the vehicles they manufacture are not for any foreign brands like Toyota, Volkswagen, Hyundai, and so on. All these vehicles are being assembled for Iranian brands to be sold domestically and internationally. These vehicles can be found in several countries including Russia, Belarus, Iraq, Azerbaijan, Venezuela, Syria, and even Senegal. The automotive industry there is actually the third largest industry in the country, right behind oil and gas, and accounts for 10% of the country's GDP. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the types of cars that are manufactured, their specs, prices, as well as some of the markets that Iran exports their vehicles to. Before we get into this, guys, I just want to make it clear that this is in no way a propaganda video for or against Iran or the government. I'm going to remain very apolitical for obvious reasons. The big Iranian car makers, SAIPA and IKCO, both began vehicle production before the 1979 revolution. After the revolution, however, when sanctions blocked the imports of most cars into the country, topped with the Islamic government's unwillingness to do business with the Soviets, domestic car production ramped up at SAIPA and IKCO factories to meet the automobile demands of the country. That is the main reason why if you step off the plane in Iran today, you would not see very many brands that you're familiar with here in the Western world. Imagine you stroll into a car lot or dealership there trying to buy an Iranian car. Let's go over some of the cars you'd find, some basic specs, and their prices. I'm also going to be showing the rough monthly payments for some of these cars, which for the sake of simplicity will be based on a 9-year term at 15% APR with $1,000 down, which from what I've heard are some pretty typical finance terms over there. Keep in mind that these cars and payments were more affordable before the economy started spiraling in the last 5 to 10 years. Starting with the Paycon, the OG, and the old reliable. This car has a rich history for being the original car of Iran. This car is manufactured by Iran Khodro. It dates all the way back to 1967 but was in production up until 2005. The pickup model seen here in this listing continued production for another 10 years after that. The main reason for its season production would be for its high emissions and fuel consumption, which if you've ever been to a big Iranian city, you would notice that the smog and pollution can be pretty bad at times. Its design is based on the 1966 Hillman Hunter. The Iranian-made Paycon puts out about 73 horses. Its combined fuel economy is about 24 miles per gallon. I couldn't find the listing for the passenger version, so I'll go over a listing for the work truck instead. This is being sold for 320 million toman, which is about $5,300. Monthly payments would be about $80 a month. Next, we have the Samand LX. This car is made by IKCO. It is sort of advertised as the new car of Iran since it started production as the Paycon was being phased out. Puts out about 100 horsepower, giving it a 0 to 60 time of about 13.5 seconds. Pretty impressive, right? On the bright side, it's advertised to get about 38 miles per gallon. This listing is priced at 585 million toman, which is about $9,750. Considering the average Iranian salary is about $350 a month, that is expensive. IKCO has a partnership with French car makers Peugeot Citroën that allows IKCO to manufacture and assemble several models of vehicles to be sold in Iran and exported internationally. This is the reason that if you go to Iran, you will see Peugeots everywhere. IKCO manufactures the Peugeot 405, which, fun fact, the Samand that we mentioned earlier as a new car of Iran is actually based on the 405 platform. Also, my grandpa owned one of these cars and he would drive me around in it. Good times. IKCO also manufactures the Peugeot Pars, which is a facelifted version of the 405, as well as the Peugeot 206 and 207. The Europeans watching this know about these cars, but for my American viewers, the 405 is from the late 80s and the 206, 207 is from the 90s and 2000s. But they are still being manufactured as new in Iran. The last few Peugeots that I just mentioned run from about $4,500 on the low end to about $9,000 on the high end, depending on when they are manufactured and also the mileage on them. Also, keep in mind this is used, not new. More recently, newer Peugeot models started popping out of Iranian factories, including the Peugeot 508, 2008, and 301. But these are much less common than the models I mentioned previously because they're just not very affordable. Peugeot, though, is not the only French car you'd find in Iran. Renault has a substantial presence. This is the Renault Iran website, and to be honest, I don't recognize most of these models, but these are the ones that stand out to me the most because I've seen them before. The Tondar 90, which is pretty much a rebranded 2004 Dacia Logan. It's actually produced and sold jointly by IKCO and another manufacturer, SAIPA. For comparison, $13,000 can buy you the similar mileage 2019 Nissan Kicks in America. SAIPA is the other big boy in the Iranian automotive manufacturing industry. They started out in the late 60s under the Shah, producing the French Citroën Dion, known locally as the Gion. Fun fact, one of these sat destroyed and covered in the shared courtyard of my grandma's apartment building for pretty much my entire life. From say 2003-2004 until the last time I was there in 2019, I would look out my window and I would see it sitting there exactly the same way I'd see it last. I have no idea why no one took the initiative to get rid of that eyesore, but I heard that recently someone finally took care of the problem. Another French car produced there was a Citroën Xantia from 2000 to 2010, which is no longer produced there, but I always liked it as a kid because it reminded me of the DeLorean from Back to the Future. SAIPA's main staple has been the production of the 1987 Kia Pride. This car is known to be more affordable, but I think of it as a death trap. I mean, looking at this car, it's obvious that there's not much protecting you in a bad accident. Here's a listing for a used Pride. This one with 128,000 kilometers on the odometer is selling for about $4,000. Seems like we finally have a motivated seller who is at least halfway decent at taking photos of the car they're trying to sell. As you can tell, SAIPA updated the interior so it doesn't look like it's from 1987. It also comes with a pickup truck for $5,500, which yes, it does look quite goofy compared to American trucks like the Ford F-150. SAIPA has been making new models like the Sena, Quick, Shaheen, and even SUV models like the Changan more recently. Prices for these cars new run from $7,200 on the low end to $40,000 on the high end. But keep in mind, if you buy these new, then your car is on the back order for 2 years. They have signed deals with both Russia and Belarus in 2023, agreeing to export 90,000 cars to the two countries and deals collectively worth $900 million. As European, Japanese, and American car companies left since the start of the Ukraine war, SAIPA swooped in to take their places. Later that year, SAIPA signed a deal to export an additional 200,000 cars to Venezuela over the course of 5 years. 160,000 units of the Pride were sold in Iraq in 2021 alone, for $6,800 a unit according to this ad. Not surprisingly, SAIPA has a factory in Syria, but as of the time the article was written during the Syrian war, only 3 to 4 cars are able to get manufactured daily. IKCO has an international presence too. The Samand is commonly seen around neighboring Azerbaijan. Tens of thousands of units have been shipped to the country over the past several years. IKCO also has a factory in the African nation of Senegal where the Samand, Runa, and Dena have been produced for the taxi fleet there as well as for police cars. The two conglomerates directly employ about 100,000 people. With tightening sanctions, the country has found ways to produce parts that used to be imported domestically. Besides the importation of some raw materials, the industry as a whole is self-sufficient. We mentioned at the beginning of this video that the automotive industry accounts for 10% of the country's $414 billion GDP, meaning that this industry is worth over $40 billion. Iran alone accounts for half of the Middle East vehicle production and ranks 16th in the world with just under 1.2 million vehicles produced. Keep in mind that Iran is producing these vehicles for their domestic brands and not for international car makers like some of the other countries that rank higher. From the iconic Paycon to the more recent models by SAIPA and IKCO, Iranian cars cater to a variety of markets sanctioned by the Western world. This domestic production not only meets local demand but also expands Iran's presence in the global automotive market. Politics aside, Iran's achievements in the automotive industry are very noteworthy, highlighting the country's capability to sustain and grow an essential sector under challenging conditions. Thank you for watching.